My fiance laughed while his dad called me a gold digger at our engagement dinner, so I handed back the ring and walked out in silence. Ooh, let's see. I, 28 female, just walked out on my fiance, 30 male, of 2 years after what was supposed to be our celebratory engagement dinner last night. I'm sitting alone in my apartment right now, still in the dress I wore, mascara streaked down my face, trying to make sense of everything that happened. Alex and I met 3 years ago at a charity fundraiser. He works in finance, comes from old money, and moves in circles I never did growing up. I'm a public school teacher who paid my own way through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. Despite our different backgrounds, we connected instantly. He was charming, intelligent, and seemed to value my independence and passion for education. I felt hard for him, and he seemed just as in love with me. 2 weeks ago, he proposed during a weekend trip to the coast. It was intimate, romantic, and everything I could have dreamed of. I said yes without hesitation. The ring was gorgeous, an emerald cut diamond that must have cost a fortune. I was floating on air, excited to start our life together. Last night was our official engagement dinner with his family at Lee Jordan, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I'd met his parents a handful of times before, always feeling slightly uncomfortable around his father Edward, a stern investment banker who rarely smiled. His mother Cynthia was polite but distant, the type who measures worth by family lineage and country club membership. I spent hours getting ready, wanted to make a good impression. I wore a navy blue dress I'd saved 3 months to buy, did my hair in an elegant updo, and even borrowed my roommate's pearl earrings. I wanted so badly for them to see me as worthy of their son. The evening started well enough. Champagne was poured. Congratulations, orphans. Alex held my hand under the table, squeezing it reassuringly whenever I seemed nervous. Then, during the main course, Edward cleared his throat and fixed his gaze on me. So, Claire, he said, swallowing his wine, now that you're officially joining the family, we should discuss the prenuptial agreement. The table went silent. Alex stands beside me. Dad, we haven't even set a date yet, Alex said with a nervous laugh. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Edward's expression hardened. Nonsense. This matter should be settled early. The Bennett family asset needs protection. I felt my cheeks burning. I understand the need to protect family assets, I said carefully. I don't have any issues with a fair prenup. Cynthia gave me a thin smile. How pragmatic of you. Well, you've certainly landed on your feet, haven't you? Edward continued, his tone growing sharper. A school teacher marrying into the Bennett fortune. Your mother must be thrilled. My mother passed away when I was 19. Alex knew this. His parents knew this. My mother would have wanted me to be happy, I said quietly, my appetite gone. Edward chuckled. I'm sure she would. Nothing makes a mother happier than seeing her daughter secure a worthy husband. I looked at Alex, waiting for him to say something to defend me, but he just stared at his plate. I didn't say yes to Alex because of his money, I said, my voice shaking slightly. I love him. Of course you do, dear, Cynthia interjected with forced sweetness. The money is just a fortune or bonus, isn't it? Edward laughed then, a harsh sound that cut through the restaurant's ambient noise. Let's not be naive. Pretty young women from modest background don't pursue men like my son for their personality. I felt like I've been slapped. Excuse me? Dad, Alex finally spoke, but his voice lacked conviction. What? Edward challenged. I'm simply acknowledging what everyone at this table is thinking. She's a gold digger, a rather transparent one at that. And then it happened. Alice laughed. A short, awkward chuckle that might have been nervousness or an attempt to diffuse tension, but it wasn't a denial. He didn't defend me. He laughed. In that moment, everything went very quiet in my mind. I looked at Alice, this man I thought I knew, and realized I was seeing him clearly for the first time. The silence was deafening, his laugh damning. Without a word, I slipped the ring off my finger. I placed it gently next to his water glass. The clink of diamond against crystal seemed impossibly loud. Claire, he started, finally registering what was happening. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out of the restaurant. Not running, not crying, just walking, one foot in front of the other, head held high. I didn't look back, not even when I heard him call my name. Now I'm sitting here wondering if I overreacted, if I threw away my future over one bad dinner. But then I remembered his laugh, and I know I couldn't have stayed. Was I wrong? Should I have fought harder? Am I just proving his father right by walking away? I don't know what happens next. I just know I couldn't marry into a family we had always been seen as less than, and I couldn't be with someone who wouldn't stand up for me. Update 2. It's been 3 days since I walked out of that restaurant, and my world has been a hurricane of emotions and confrontations. Alex came to my apartment the morning after. I was still in my pajamas, eyes swollen from crying, when I heard his persistent knocking. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but I needed closure. I needed answers. When I opened the door, he looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. He was holding the ring in one hand and a bouquet of roses in the other. Classic Alex, thinking grand gestures could paper over fundamental problems. Please, he said, his voice hoarse. Let me explain. I let him in, but kept my distance, arms crossed over my chest like armor. I'm sorry about last night, he started. My father was completely out of line. He had too much to drink, and you know how he gets. Do I? I asked, because in the 3 years we've been together, you've never once mentioned that your father thinks I'm a gold-digging opportunist. He winced. He doesn't really think that. Yes, Alex, he does. And what hurts more than his words is that you sat there and let him say them. You laughed. Alex ran his hand through his hair in frustration. It was just nervous laughter. What was I supposed to do? Cause a scene in the middle of Lee Jordan? You were supposed to defend me. My voice cracked with emotion. You were supposed to tell your father I'm the woman you love, that I've never asked you for money, that I worked hard my entire life. You were supposed to be on my side. He placed a ring on my coffee table. I'm on your side, Claire. Always. I love you. My father's opinion doesn't matter. But it does matter, Alex. It matters because you are letting him disrespect me. It matters because someday we might have children, and I won't let them grow up hearing their grandfather call their mother a gold digger while their father sits in silent agreement. For a moment, he looked genuinely confused. Silent agreement? That's not what happened. Then what would you call it? He couldn't answer. Has your father always felt this way about me? Alex hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice small. Because it doesn't matter what he thinks. I love you for you, your kindness, your passion for teaching, your ridiculous obsession with true crime podcasts. Who cares what my father thinks? I care, I said simply, because his attitude reflects what our life together would be like. Every family gathering, every holiday, every milestone, I'd always be the gold digger who trapped their son, and apparently you'd always be the man who stands by and let it happen. We can fix this, he insisted. I'll talk to my father, make him apologize. We can postpone the wedding until things are better. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something profound. This isn't just about your father, Alex. It's about you. It's about who you've become when you're around him. I don't recognize that person, and I don't want to marry him. He left after an hour of circular arguments, taking the ring with him. I've spent the last 2 days crying, doubting myself, then remembering his laugh and feeling my resolve strengthening again. My roommate Taylor has been amazing, bringing me ice cream and listening to me rant for hours. Alex has called 17 times. His mother, surprisingly, texted me. Edward is stubborn, but he will come around. Don't throw away your future over pride. As if standing up for myself was just vanity. Yesterday, my principal called me into her office. Apparently, Edward has contacted the school board, mentioning concerns about my emotional stability and professional conduct. Luckily, my principal has known me for 5 years and told him in no uncertain terms that my personal life was none of his business. The fact that Alex's father would try to jeopardize my career makes me even more certain I made the right decision. What would he have done if we were married and I disagree with him? What lines wouldn't he cross? I haven't told Alex about his father's interference. Part of me wants to see if he will find out and react appropriately. So far, nothing. Tonight, Taylor and I are opening a bottle of wine and having a Born the Wedding magazine party. It feels both cathartic and heartbreaking. I loved Alex. I still love him. But I'm beginning to realize that loving someone isn't enough if you don't have the courage to stand with you when it matters. The hardest part has been dealing with the questions from friends and co-workers. Everyone wants to know what happened, why the sudden change. I've been vague, saying only that we realized we wanted different things. It's easier than explaining that the man I thought would be my husband sat in silently while his father called me a gold digger, then laughed like it was some kind of joke. My sister called from California after I texted her what happened. She wasn't surprised. I'd always thought he was too eager to please his parents, she said. Remember how he changed his vacation plans last Christmas because his mother said she'd be devastated if he wasn't there. People show you who they are, Claire. You just have to pay attention. She was right, of course. There has been signs all along, little moments where Alex defied to his parents' wishes over mine or ours. I brushed them off as him being a good son, respecting his family. Now I see it was something else, a fundamental inability to stand on his own, to be his own man. I walked by a bridal boutique yesterday and saw a dress in the window, almost identical to the one I bookmarked for myself. For a moment, I felt that familiar ache, that sense of loss not just of Alex but of the future we planned. The house we talked about buying, the children we might have had, the life that now exists only in some alternate universe where he'd been brave enough to choose me. But then I remember the look in Edward's eyes as he called me a gold digger, that cold, dismissive stare that reduced me to nothing more than a fortune hunter. And I remembered Alex's laugh, that soft, damning chuckle that said more than words ever could. No, I made the right choice. And someday, when the pain is faded, I hope Alex realizes it too. Update 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since I ended my engagement, and the storm has finally begun to come. I've returned to teaching, finding solace in my third graders' uncomplicated affection and curiosity. There is something healing about helping a child sound out a difficult word when your own life feels unpronounceable. I haven't spoken to Alex in 10 days. After dozens of calls and texts, he finally sent an email that showed me exactly where we stand. He wrote that while he still loves me, he thinks I'm being unnecessarily dramatic about one uncomfortable dinner. He suggested we take a break until I'm ready to be reasonable. As if standing up for my dignity was unreasonable. The most revealing part came at the end. My family has certain expectations, Claire. They've sacrificed a lot to give me the life I have. Sometimes compromise means accepting imperfect situations for the greater good. Reading between the lines was easy. The greater good meant his inheritance, his position in his father's company, his social standing. I was expecting to be the one compromising my dignity, my self-respect, my worth. Also, he wouldn't have to stand up to his father. I didn't respond to the email. What could I say that I hadn't already said? What I didn't expect was the call from Cynthia 3 days ago. She asked if we could meet for coffee, alone. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small cafe far from her usual haunts. She looked different somehow, less polished, more human. She ordered a black coffee and sat across from me, hands folded neatly on the table. I owe you an apology, Claire, she said without preamble. What happened at the dinner was unacceptable. I was speechless. This was the last thing I expected from Cynthia Bennett. Edward can be traditional in his views, she continued carefully, and Alex has always sought his approval, sometimes at great personal cost. I noticed, I said brightly. She smiled slightly. I should have intervened that night. I've been intervening for 30 years, smoothing Edward's rough edges, excusing his behavior. I was wrong not to speak up. I studied her face, trying to understand the sudden change. Why are you telling me this now? She sighed, a deep sound that seemed to carry decades of resignation. Because I see myself in you, Claire. 30 years ago, I was you from a modest background, in love with a Bennett man, trying to prove myself worthy. The difference is, I stayed. I compromised. I told myself it was worth it. She paused. I'm not sure it was. Something in my chest tightened. Are you unhappy? Not exactly. I've had a privileged life, beautiful children, but I lost something of myself along the way. My voice, my certainty. When he stood up and walked out that night, I felt envious. We talked for nearly 2 hours. She told me about her early years with Edward, how his family had treated her, how she'd gradually surrendered pieces of herself to fit into their world, how she'd watched Alex become more like his father year by year, despite her efforts. He loves you, she said as we prepared to leave, more than he's ever loved anyone. But love isn't always enough, is it? I shook my head, tears threatening again. No, it isn't. She touched my hand briefly. Whatever you decide, Claire, don't compromise yourself away. Not for anyone. I've been turning our conversation over in my mind ever since. Was she warning me, encouraging me, saying goodbye? Perhaps all three. This morning, flowers arrived at my apartment, not from Alice, but from Edward. The card read simply, my behavior was inexcusable. EB, no explicit apology, just an acknowledgement. Typical. I haven't told Alex about either interactions. I'm not sure if his mother or father has mentioned them to him either. Part of me wonders if this is another test, whether he will make amends because he wants to or because his parents pushed him to. Taylor thinks I should block his number and move on. My brother says I dodged the bullet, but it's not that simple, is it? I didn't just lose a fiancé. I lost the future I thought we'd had, the home we'd planned, the children we'd discussed. Dreams don't die quietly. Every morning, I check my left hand automatically, still expecting to feel the weight of that ring. Its absence remains both a sorrow and a relief. Update 1 month. 1 month since the engagement dinner, and life has taken several unexpected turns. Last weekend, I was packing my apartment. I decided to move to a smaller place since I could no longer afford this one without Alex's contribution when he showed up unannounced. Seeing him in the doorway, surrounded by half-filled boxes and packing tapes, made my heart lurch painfully. "You're moving?" he asked, looking stricken. "I can't afford this place on a teacher's salary," I said simply. He looked around at the dismantled life we'd planned together. "I'll keep paying my share. You don't have to move." "Yes, I do." I set down the books I was packing. "What are you doing here, Alex?" He came to tell me he'd quit his job at his father's firm. He'd accepted a position at a smaller financial advisory company on the other side of the city. He handed me a letter, his father's bewildered, angry response to his resignation. "I should have done this years ago," he said quietly. "Be my own man instead of his echo." I invited him in, made coffee, and we talked, really talked, for the first time in years. He admitted he spent his life seeking his father's approval, even when it meant compromising his own values. He acknowledged how deeply he'd hurt me by not defending me, not just at that dinner, but the countless times before in smaller ways I hadn't even noticed. "I don't expect you to take me back," he said. "I just wanted you to know that you were right about all of it." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to fall into his arms, tell him we could start over. Another part remembered the look on his face when the father called me a gold digger, the momentary flash of consideration before the nervous laugh, as if it entertained the possibility. Anytime, I told him, "I'm proud of you for standing up to your father, but this isn't just about him." He nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here if you're ready." After he left, I sat among my bus stop belongings, feeling strangely calm. For the first time in weeks, the future didn't seem like a vast, terrifying void. 2 days later, Cynthia invited me to lunch. She told me Edward was beside himself over Alex's decision. She seemed different, lighter somehow, with a spark in her eye I hadn't seen before. "Edward doesn't understand why Alex would walk away from everything she paused, for a woman, for himself." I corrected gently. "He did it for himself." She smiled. "Yes, I suppose he did." Before we parted, she pressed something into my hand, a small velvet pouch. Inside was a vintage sapphire ring. "This was my grandmother's," she explained. "Edward never liked it, said it wasn't impressive enough for a Bennett wife. But it's the only thing I had for my family." She closed my fingers around it. "Whether you and Alex find your way back to each other or not, I want you to have it. A reminder to keep your own light, even when others try to dim it." I tried to refuse, but she insisted. "It wasn't an engagement ring," she said. "It was solidarity between women who understood each other." I didn't end up moving, but not to the smaller apartment I planned. My friend Tara needed a roommate in a house across town further from Alex, closer to my school, with a garden where I can grow the herbs I've always wanted to try. It feels right, making decisions based on solely on what I want, not what fits into someone else's life. Alex and I have been talking cautiously, honestly, no grand gestures, no pressure. Just coffee once a week. Conversation that peel back layers of assumptions and expectations we never examined before. He's different away from his family shadow, funnier, more relaxed, more genuinely himself. Last week, he asked if we could try again, start afresh. I told him I wasn't ready, and I needed to know who I am without him before I could consider who I might be with him. "I understand," he said, "and I believe you really did. I'm wearing Cynthia's sapphire ring on my right hand today, not as a promise to anyone else, but as a promise to myself to never silence my own voice, to never compromise my worth, to never accept being seen as less than I am. I don't know if Alice and I will find our way back to each other. I don't know if the changes he's making will last. I don't know if I can ever fully trust him again. But I do know this. Walking out of that restaurant was the most difficult and most necessary thing I've ever done. Sometimes the hardest steps to take are the ones that lead you back to yourself." Update 6 months. 6 months have passed since that fateful dinner, and it feels like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. I'm sitting on the porch of my new house. Yes, my house, a small craftsman with blue shutters and a maple tree in the front yard. I used the money I'd been saving for the wedding as a down payment instead. Every mortgage payment feels like an affirmation. This is mine, and by me, chosen by me. Alex and I tried. We really did. For 3 months, we rebuilt our relationship from the ground up, honest conversations, couples therapy, careful boundaries. He remained at his new job despite his father's increasing pressure to return to the family business. He joined a support group for adults dealing with controlling parents. He was doing everything right, and yet something fundamental had shifted. Each time he took me to dinner, I found myself scanning the restaurant, tensing at the sight of older men who resembled Edward. Each time he introduced me to colleagues, I analyzed their expression for traces of judgment or dismissal. The trust that had been broken wasn't repairing, despite both our efforts. 2 months ago, we were having dinner at my house when I finally found the courage to say what I've been feeling. I don't think we can fix this, I said quietly. He set down his fork, his expression sad but not surprised. Because of my father? No, I answered truthfully. Because of us. Because now I know what I need in a partner, and you know what you need to become for yourself. And I don't think we can give each other those things while we are together. He nodded slowly. I was afraid you'd say that. I felt it too. We cried together that night, mourning not just what we lost, but what we learned too late. He kissed me goodbye at my door, returned Cynthia's sapphire ring when I tried to give it back, and walked out of my life with dignity and grace. Edward sent a brief, formal note. Alex informs me of your final separation. I wish you well in your future endeavors. Coming from him, it was practically a warm embrace. Cynthia and I still meet for coffee occasionally. She started painting again, something she gave up when she married into the Bennett family. Last month, she showed me a watercolor she'd done of two women sitting by the ocean. That's us, she said, in another life. I've been promoted to lead teacher at my school, with a modest but meaningful salary increase. I've started dating again cautiously, selectively, nothing serious yet, but I'm open to the possibility. More importantly, I'm complete on my own in a way I never was before. My friends joke that I should write a book, how walking out of a fancy restaurant changed my life. Maybe someday I will. For now, I'm content to sit on my porch, watching the leaves change color on my maple tree, feeling the weight of Cynthia's ring on my right hand, a reminder of the woman who didn't walk out and the woman who did. Last week, I ran into Alex at a coffee shop downtown. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, laughing at something on her phone. He looked up and saw me, his smile faltering just slightly before recovering. We exchanged pleasantries, brief updates. As I turned to leave, he touched my arm gently. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For having the courage I didn't. For showing me what it looks like to value yourself. I smiled, a genuine smile without the ache that had accompanied thoughts of him for so long. Take care of yourself, Alex. I am, he replied. For the first time, I really am. Walking away, I felt the final piece of a complicated puzzle fall into place. Sometimes loving someone means leaving them. Sometimes the happily ever after isn't the fairy tale we imagined, but the reality we built for ourselves, brick by brick, choice by choice. I slipped the sapphire ring off my finger and into my pocket. I didn't need the reminder anymore. I have become the reminder of strength, of worth, of the power of walking away when staying would cost too much. Was it all worth it? The pain, the loss, the starting over? As I unlocked the door to my little blue house, mine alone, I know the answer with bones deep certainty. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes.